I'm 88 years old, and I have outlived the years when I might have fixed what I broke. It has taken me this long to understand how my pride cost me my children. I don't mean that in a dramatic way. There was no single door slammed, no final argument that split the house in two. It happened slowly. So slowly I mistook it for life, unfolding as it should. Now I sit in a small apartment with a view of a parking lot. I have a chair by the window where I spend most afternoons. The light shifts across the floor, and I follow it without meaning to. There are days when the phone doesn't ring at all. I tell myself everyone is busy. I have said that for years. At 88, you begin to count things differently. Not birthdays, not holidays. You count how many times you might still see someone. You count winters. You count the steps from the bedroom to the kitchen and hope your knees hold. When I look back, I see a man who believed he was right. That was the center of it. I believed I was right about how a family should be run, about respect, about discipline, about what children owed their father. I thought that was strength. In my 20s, I was certain of almost everything. I had grown up with very little. My own father worked in a factory and spoke only when necessary. When he did speak, we listened. That was how order was kept. That was how boys became men. I married at 24. Your grandmother was softer than I was. She laughed easily. She had a way of kneeling down to look our children in the eye when they spoke. I used to tell her she was spoiling them. She would just shake her head and say, "They're small for such a short time." We had 2 children, a boy first, then a girl 3 years later. I remember holding my son in the hospital and thinking about the future as if it were a straight line. School, sports, good grades, a respectable job. I thought my role was to shape him firmly, so the world wouldn't. I worked long hours. I told myself that was love. Overtime meant security. Security meant I was a good father. When I came home tired, I expected quiet. I expected order. Toys picked up, homework done. If something wasn't done, I corrected it. Immediately. I wasn't cruel. I never laid a hand on them in anger. But my voice was sharp. My expectations were clear. There wasn't much room for debate. I remember my son once telling me he didn't want to play football anymore. He was 13. He said he preferred drawing. I told him drawing wouldn't put food on the table. I said he would thank me one day for pushing him. He didn't argue. He just nodded. At the time, I felt proud of that. A boy who knew his father's word was final. I thought that meant he respected me. My daughter was quieter. She watched everything. When she brought home a report card with 1 low grade, I didn't ask what had happened. I pointed at the number and told her she could do better. I thought I was encouraging excellence. Looking back, I don't remember praising them much. I remember correcting them, guiding them, steering them. I told myself that love was understood. It didn't need to be said. There were small moments that should have warned me. The first time my son stopped telling me about his day, the way he would answer with 1-word replies. Fine. Nothing. Okay. I assumed that was adolescence. The first time my daughter chose to talk to her mother instead of me when something upset her. I told myself girls naturally confided in their mothers. I didn't see the pattern. Or maybe I saw it and refused to name it. When my son was 18, he wanted to attend an art school in another state. He had saved brochures. He had even put together a portfolio. He came to me one evening and laid it all on the kitchen table. I remember the look on his face. Not defiant, hopeful. I told him no. I said he would study business at the local university. It was practical, sensible. I said he could draw in his spare time. He didn't raise his voice. He just gathered the papers slowly. That slowness should have told me something. He went to the local university. He finished his degree. He found a job in an office. He moved out at 22. We shook hands when he left. That's what I remember most. A handshake. My daughter married young. A decent man. Not ambitious, but kind. I made a few comments about his lack of drive. I thought I was protecting her. She told me once, quietly, that not everyone measured success the way I did. I laughed at that. I said she would understand when she was older. I always believed time was on my side. That one day when they were settled, they would see I had been right. That they would come back and say, "You were strict, but you meant well." That day never came. Instead, visits grew shorter. Phone calls became less frequent. Holidays were negotiated carefully. "We'll stop by for a bit," they would say. A bit. I noticed my wife trying to smooth things over. She would call them more often. She would send small packages, baked goods, birthday cards with long notes inside. I rarely wrote more than a line. I told myself I didn't want to intrude. But the truth is, I didn't know how to speak to them without giving advice, without correcting something. Years passed that way, quietly. When my son had his first child, a boy, he called to tell me. I congratulated him. I asked about the hospital, the doctor, practical things. I did not tell him I was proud. The first time I held my grandson, I felt something loosen in my chest. He was small and warm, and he wrapped his fingers around mine. I thought maybe this was a second chance, but even then, I interfered. I offered suggestions, criticized small things, the way they fed him, the way they let him cry. My son's jaw would tighten. He would say, "We've got it, Dad." I heard irritation in that. I heard disrespect. I did not hear a boundary. The real turning point came later, and even then, I almost missed it. My wife fell ill in her late 70s. It was gradual at first. Fatigue, then hospital visits, then a diagnosis that came in a quiet room with a doctor who did not meet my eyes for long. Our children came more often then. They sat by her bed. They spoke softly to her. I stood near the window, asking about medications and treatment plans. One afternoon, when she was alone with me, she said, "They love you, you know. They're just tired." "Tired of what?" I asked. She looked at me in a way that made me uncomfortable, of never being enough. I remember feeling defensive. I said I had given them everything, a stable home, education, discipline. She didn't argue. She just closed her eyes. She died 6 months later. At the funeral, my son stood up to speak. He talked about her kindness, her patience, the way she made them feel safe. He did not mention me once. I told myself that was appropriate. It was her day. After she was gone, the house felt larger than it ever had. The silence was different. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. For a while, the children called often. They checked on me, brought groceries, invited me to stay with them. I declined most of the invitations. I said I didn't want to be a burden. That wasn't the full truth. The full truth was that I did not know how to sit in their homes without being in charge. I did not know how to be a guest in the lives I had once directed. Over time, the calls spaced out again. One evening, a few years after my wife passed, my son and I argued on the phone. It was about something small. I don't even remember what. Politics, maybe. Or how he was raising his own son. He said, "Dad, I'm not a child anymore." I replied, "You'll always be my child." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "That's the problem." He hung up. We did not speak for almost a year. That was when the understanding began to form. Slowly, painfully. I started to see that pride had shaped my voice for decades. Pride in being the provider. Pride in being the authority. pride in never apologizing because I believed apologies weakened a father's position. I cannot recall a single time I said, I was wrong. Not to my children. By the time I considered it, the words felt foreign in my mouth. The moment of irreversibility came not with a death, but with a realization. My granddaughter graduated from college. I received a formal invitation in the mail. I sat in the audience among other families, watching them embrace, laugh, take photos. When the ceremony ended, my family gathered in a small circle. They smiled politely when I approached. We took a picture. I stood at the edge. They were kind, respectful. But I was outside something I had once led. That was the day I understood that I was no longer central in their lives, not in the way I had assumed I always would be. I had believed authority guaranteed closeness. It does not. What is permanently lost is not contact. I still see them on occasion. We exchange calls. Birthdays are remembered. What is lost is ease, the easy laughter, the unguarded conversations, the instinct to share first. I am not the person they turn to when they are unsure. I am not the comfort they seek. I am a figure from their past. Important, yes, but distant. And I cannot go back to when they were small and sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for me to look up and ask about their day. Time does not circle back. It moves forward, even when you wish it would hesitate. If I speak to you now, it is not to warn you in a dramatic way. I have no interest in telling anyone how to live. I spent my life doing that. I only wish I had understood that being right is a lonely victory. I wish I had asked more questions and given fewer instructions. I wish I had told my son that drawing mattered because it mattered to him. I wish I had told my daughter that I admired her gentleness instead of questioning her choices. But wishes are quiet things. They do not alter the past. At 88, I do not have the strength for grand repairs. I have made small attempts. A few apologies, spoken awkwardly. My son listened. He said he appreciated it. We did not dwell on it. Perhaps that is enough. I know I will not see many more summers. The body makes that clear. Some mornings I sit on the edge of the bed and wait for my legs to cooperate. I move slower. I tire easily. There is a photograph on my table of my children when they were young. They are sitting on the floor, building something with wooden blocks. I am in the background, reading a newspaper. I do not remember that moment, but the picture shows it clearly. I was there, and I was not. If you take anything from an old man's voice, let it be this. Love is not understood simply because you feel it. It has to be shown in ways the other person can recognize. I did not know that. Now I do. And that knowledge came when there was little left to do with it. I will likely die as I have lived these last years. Quietly. My children will come. They will stand by my bed. They will do what needs to be done. They are good people. I am proud of them. I just wish I had said that sooner, and more often, when it might have settled somewhere warm instead of echoing in a room like this. That is what pride cost me. Not my children entirely, just the closeness that might have been.